Life is a delicate symphony, composed in the quiet chambers of eternity, where every note of joy and sorrow, every pause of waiting, and every crescendo of revelation is woven into a divine masterpiece. We stand as instruments in the hands of the composer, longing for the melody of love, yet often mistaking noise for music. When God is about to bless you with a relationship, He moves in silence, testing your trust, refining your heart, and shielding His work from premature exposure. Not every whisper deserves an echo. Not every seed must be spoken of before it breaks the soil. Silence is not absence. It is the language of the sacred, the hush before the dawn, the stillness where destiny takes root. So, when heaven stirs and love approaches, let your spirit listen, not announce. For the greatest blessings often come not to the loud, but to those who trust the unseen hand composing their love story. There is something sacred about the way God moves in our lives, something deliberate, something measured. He is not rushed by our impatience, nor is He swayed by our fears. When He sets something in motion, when He begins to unfold a blessing in your life, there is a season where you must simply be still and let Him work. Too often we mistake silence for inaction, forgetting that the most powerful things God does are first done in secret. Look at creation itself. Before the world was filled with light, before the mountains stood and the oceans roared, the earth was formless, shrouded in darkness. But even then, even in the quiet void, God was moving. His Spirit hovered over the waters, unseen, unheard, preparing for the moment when He would speak and life would begin. That is how God works in every part of our lives, and that is how He works in relationships. Before you see the fruit, the roots must take hold. Before the promise is fulfilled, the foundation must be laid. And that foundation is often laid in silence. When God is about to bless you with a relationship, He does not begin with a grand announcement. He begins with preparation. But the problem is, we don't like waiting. We want confirmation, validation, assurance that what we are sensing is real. We get so excited about what God might be doing that we start broadcasting it before we even know what it is. And in doing so, we open the door for confusion, for distraction, for doubt. Think of Joseph. God gave him dreams of greatness, visions of a future where he would stand in a place of authority. But Joseph, in his youth, in his excitement, ran ahead of God's timing. He spoke too soon, and because of that, he found himself thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, enduring years of hardship before his promise finally came to pass. The dream was real, the vision was true, but the timing of its revelation was premature. How many of us have done the same? How many times have we shared something too soon, only to watch it struggle under the weight of opinions, doubts, and discouragement? Some things are meant to be nurtured in private before they are revealed in public. Some blessings need time to grow before they can be spoken of. It's not that God doesn't want to bless you. It's not that He doesn't want you to find love, to have companionship, to step into the relationship He has ordained for you. It's that He wants you to trust Him enough to let it unfold in His time, in His way. Look at a seed. When you plant it in the ground, it does not immediately break the surface. It stays hidden. It takes root in silence. No one sees the process, but deep in the soil, life is beginning. If you dig it up too soon to prove to yourself that something is happening, you risk killing what was meant to grow. That is what happens when we speak before the season is right. We expose something that was meant to be protected. We let too many voices in, and suddenly what God was nurturing in the quiet becomes clouded with unnecessary noise. But when we trust Him, when we truly believe that His timing is perfect, we learn to rest in the silence. We learn to recognize that just because we cannot see something happening does not mean that God is not moving. So when you sense that God is doing something new in your life, when you feel that He is preparing to bless you with a relationship, resist the urge to announce it. Let Him work. Let Him shape it. Let Him guard it until it is ready to be revealed. Because when it is time, when the season has come, there will be no need for explanation, no need for justification. What God blesses, He establishes. What He ordains, He sustains. And when love is truly from Him, it will not need to be proven. It will simply be. There are some battles in life that are fought with swords and shields, but there are others, far more dangerous, that are fought with whispers and words. Not every person in your life is meant to hear what God is doing in your heart. Not every ear is meant to receive the seeds of your blessing, because the moment you begin to speak, the moment you begin to share what is still being formed in the quiet places, there will always be forces, both seen and unseen, waiting to challenge it. From the very beginning, this has been true. Look at the Garden of Eden. The serpent did not attack Adam and Eve with a weapon. He didn't strike them with force. He came with a question, with a suggestion, with a whisper that planted doubt in their hearts. The enemy has always worked this way, through deception, through subtle interference, through the power of words that twist, discourage, and confuse. And the moment God begins to move in your life, the moment He starts preparing something good, you can be sure that resistance will follow. Some of you have felt this. The moment you share a dream, the moment you open up about something precious, negativity starts creeping in. People question it, doubt it, criticize it, and suddenly something that once felt so clear becomes clouded by opinions and uncertainties. When God is about to bless you with a relationship, when He is bringing two hearts together according to His divine plan, that is not the time to open the door to unnecessary voices. That is not the time to invite the enemy's interference by speaking too soon. Some things are meant to be guarded until they are strong enough to withstand the weight of the world. Look at Nehemiah. He had a mission to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, a task ordained by God Himself. But when he arrived in the city, when he saw the brokenness around him, he did not announce his plans. He walked through the ruins in the quiet of the night, inspecting, preparing, praying, because he knew that if he spoke too soon, opposition would come before the work had even begun. And when the time came to build, his enemies came too, mocking, questioning, trying to stop what God had set in motion. And so it is with relationships. When God is building something, there will always be those who try to tear it down. Some people speak from jealousy. Some speak from their own wounds. Others may mean well, but do not have the spiritual discernment to see what God is doing in your life. And beyond the voices of people, there are spiritual battles at play. The enemy does not attack what is stagnant. He attacks what is growing, what is moving, what is stepping into purpose. That is why silence is so important. It is not about secrecy. It is about protection. When something is in its early stages, it is vulnerable. A fire that has just been lit can be put out by the smallest gust of wind. A tree that has just begun to sprout can be uprooted by a careless hand. And a relationship that is still being formed can be crushed under the weight of unnecessary interference. This is not fear, it is wisdom. It is understanding that not everyone needs to know what God is doing in your heart. It is knowing that not every conversation is meant to be had, that not every opinion is worth considering, because when God blesses, He does it in His time, in His way. And the safest place for that blessing to grow is in the quiet, in the place where faith is stronger than the need for validation. So be careful who you allow to speak into what God is doing. Be mindful of the voices you entertain, because words have power. They can build up or tear down. They can strengthen or weaken. And when you are waiting on a promise, when you are standing on the edge of something sacred, sometimes the greatest act of faith is to simply keep your mouth shut and let God finish what He started. Love is one of the greatest gifts God has given us. But like all great gifts, it must be handled with wisdom. When God begins to move in your life, when He begins preparing your heart for a relationship, He does not rush the process. He does not throw things together carelessly. No, He takes His time, shaping both you and the person He is calling you to, refining your character, teaching you patience, making sure that when the time comes, love is not just a fleeting feeling, but a foundation that can withstand the storms of life. But we live in a world that rushes everything, a world that wants immediate results, instant gratification, fast answers, a world where love is often treated like a performance, something to be put on display before it has even had a chance to take root. People announce their feelings before they understand them. They seek validation before they seek wisdom. They allow excitement to override discernment, and then they wonder why things fall apart before they even begin. God does not work that way. He is not in the business of rushed love stories. He does not throw people together and hope for the best. He is intentional. He is precise. And when He is preparing you for a relationship, there is a season where He calls you to be still, to be quiet, to allow love to unfold naturally rather than forcing it into the light too soon. Think about Adam in the Garden of Eden. Before God gave him Eve, He placed him in a season of solitude. Adam did not know when his helpmate would come. He was simply faithful where he was, walking with God, fulfilling the purpose set before him. And when the time was right, when Adam was ready, God did not make a loud announcement. He did not bring a crowd to witness the moment. He simply caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep, and in that sacred hidden place formed the one who would walk beside him. Love is meant to be nurtured in the quiet before it is revealed in the open. It is meant to be given time to grow in prayer, in patience, in discernment. And when you speak too soon, when you announce something before it has been fully formed, you risk disrupting what God is trying to build. You invite opinions, expectations, and pressures that were never meant to be part of the process. Some of you know what it feels like to carry something fragile, something beautiful, only to have it crushed under the weight of outside voices. Some of you have felt the sting of sharing your heart too soon and watching as doubt and confusion took hold. And if you've ever been there, if you've ever watched something good unravel before your eyes, then you understand why wisdom calls for stillness. It is not about hiding. It is not about secrecy. It is about trust. Trusting that if God is in it, it does not need to be rushed. Trusting that if something is truly from Him, it does not need to be announced, defended, or explained before its time. When God writes a love story, He does it in such a way that when it is revealed, it speaks for itself. There is no need for endless words, no need for proving or convincing. Love that is truly from God is like a tree planted by streams of water. It does not fight to be seen. It simply grows. So if you find yourself in a season where God is preparing your heart, if you sense that something is unfolding but it is not yet clear, resist the urge to rush ahead. Let love breathe. Let God shape it. Let it be established in the quiet before it is revealed in the open. Because when love is real, when it is from Him, it will not need to be forced. It will simply be. Faith is not just believing when you can see. It's trusting when you can't. It's standing on the edge of the unknown and saying, God, I may not have all the answers, but I trust that you do. That kind of faith is not built in noise and chaos. It's built in silence, in the quiet spaces where God is working even when you don't realize it. When God is preparing to bless you with a relationship, He often does it in a way that requires trust. He does not lay out every step for you. He does not hand you a blueprint or give you a timeline. He simply asks you to walk with Him, to believe that He is orchestrating something beautiful, even if you do not yet see the full picture. But that is hard for us, isn't it? We like to be in control. We like to have certainty. And when we sense something happening, when we feel that God is moving in our hearts, bringing someone into our lives, our first instinct is often to talk about it, to process it with others, to seek affirmation that what we are sensing is real. But sometimes, in our eagerness to understand, we disrupt what God is doing. Sometimes, in our rush to see the outcome, we lose sight of the process. Abraham knew what it was like to be given a promise and to have no evidence of its fulfillment. God told him he would be the father of many nations, yet for years there was nothing but waiting, no child, no sign, just a promise that seemed impossible. And in that waiting, Abraham had a choice. He could trust, or he could take matters into his own hands. We know how the story went. He and Sarah tried to force the promise through their own efforts, and instead of a blessing, they brought hardship into their lives. How many of us have done the same? How many of us, when we sense God moving, feel the need to help Him along, to announce it, to rush it, to shape it in our own strength? But trust does not need proof to believe. Faith does not need constant reassurance. It simply rests in the knowledge that what God starts, He will finish. There is something powerful about trusting the unseen hand of God, something sacred about holding your peace and letting Him do what only He can do. Because when God is writing your love story, He does not need your interference. He does not need you to explain it to others, to gather opinions, to make sure everyone understands. What He needs is your trust. What He asks for is your faith. Some of you may be in that waiting season right now. You feel like something is shifting, like something is being prepared, but you can't quite see it yet. And in that uncertainty, doubt tries to creep in. You wonder if you are imagining things. You wonder if God has forgotten you, but He hasn't. He is simply working in a way that requires your faith, not your control. So let Him work, let Him move. Trust that just because you don't see it yet doesn't mean He isn't doing it. Because when the time is right, when the story has been written and the foundation has been laid, it will unfold in a way that no one can deny. You won't have to prove it. You won't have to defend it. It will simply be. Not everything God gives you is meant to be shared before it's time. Some blessings must be protected, covered, nurtured in the quiet before they are revealed. And yet we live in a world where everything is public, where people feel the need to announce their every step, where silence is mistaken for secrecy and privacy is confused with hiding. But there is wisdom in holding things close. There is power in allowing God to finish what He has started before inviting the world to weigh in. When God is preparing to bless you with a relationship, He is not just working on your heart. He is working on the heart of the person He is bringing into your life. He is aligning circumstances, refining character, deepening faith. And that work is sacred, that work is holy, and anything that is sacred must be protected. Look at Mary, the mother of Jesus. When the angel appeared to her and told her that she would carry the Son of God, she did not run through the streets shouting the news. She did not rush to explain what had happened. The Bible says she pondered these things in her heart. She held them close because she understood that some things are too precious to expose to the opinions and doubts of others. There will always be people who do not understand what God is doing in your life. There will always be voices that question, criticize, and cast doubt. If you allow those voices into something that is still in its early stages, they can plant seeds of confusion where there should be faith. They can stir up fear where there should be peace. And this is not just about people. The enemy himself is always watching, always looking for an opportunity to disrupt what God is building. He knows that if he can't stop the blessing, he can at least try to weaken it before it fully takes root. And one of the easiest ways he does that is by introducing unnecessary interference. by getting you to expose something too soon, by filling your mind with questions that were never meant to be asked, by turning something simple into something complicated. But when you trust God, when you believe that His timing is perfect, you do not feel the need to rush ahead. You do not feel the need to explain yourself or seek validation. You simply rest, knowing that when the time is right, what God has ordained will be made known in a way that no one can deny. Think about Jesus at the wedding in Cana. The wine had run out, and His mother turned to Him, expecting a miracle. But what did He say? "My time has not yet come." Even Jesus, the Son of God, understood that timing mattered. He knew that some things must wait for the appointed moment. And so it is with your relationships. What God is doing in your life does not need to be broadcast before it is ready. It does not need to be discussed, debated, or defended. It needs to be trusted. It needs to be covered in prayer. It needs to be given space to grow without the weight of outside opinions. Some of you are carrying something beautiful right now. Maybe God has placed a stirring in your heart. Maybe you sense that something is unfolding, and in your excitement you want to share it, to talk about it, to seek confirmation. But hear this: what God is doing in you is worth protecting. It is worth guarding. It is worth allowing to develop in the secret place until the appointed time. Because when it is time, when God has finished His work, it will not need explanation. It will not need justification. It will simply be. There is a divine rhythm to life, a timing that is not ours to control. When God is moving, when He is preparing something good, He does not ask for our permission, nor does He follow our schedule. He moves according to His perfect will in His perfect time. And when we try to rush ahead, when we try to force things into the open before they are ready, we risk interfering with the very blessing He is orchestrating. A relationship given by God is not like the fleeting momentary connections of this world. It is something He has written into the fabric of time, something He has ordained long before you even knew to pray for it. And if God has taken such care in preparing it, why would we not take just as much care in how we carry it? Why would we expose something sacred to the noise of unnecessary voices? The enemy knows that he cannot take away what God has set in motion. But he also knows that if he can distract you, if he can cause you to second guess, if he can stir up confusion and doubt, then he can weaken your faith in what God is doing. He wants you to seek approval from others rather than from God. He wants you to worry about what people will think rather than trusting in the one who is writing your story. But when you are walking with God, when you truly trust Him, you do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to justify His timing or prove His hand in your life. What He ordains, He sustains. What He begins, He completes. Look at Joseph. He had a dream, a vision given to him by God Himself. But instead of holding it close, instead of waiting for the right time, he spoke too soon. He told his brothers, and in their jealousy, they threw him into a pit. Did that stop God's plan for Joseph? No. What God had spoken over his life still came to pass. But Joseph's journey was made harder because he shared something before its time. And how often do we do the same? How often do we let excitement override wisdom? How often do we invite voices into our lives that were never meant to be part of the story? There are things that God is working on right now that are not meant to be revealed yet. There are blessings unfolding in silence, in the unseen places. And the greatest act of faith you can have is to trust that what He is doing does not need your constant explanation. It just needs your obedience. There is something powerful about waiting. Not passive waiting, not sitting back and doing nothing, but active trust, walking forward in faith, while allowing God to unfold things in His own way. When you wait on God, when you refuse to rush ahead, when you guard what He has given you, you are showing that you believe His plan is better than yours. And when the time comes, when the relationship God has prepared for you is ready to be seen, It will not come with confusion. It will not come with striving. It will come with peace. It will come with certainty. It will come with the kind of confirmation that does not need to be explained because it speaks for itself. So do not fear the quiet seasons. Do not feel pressured to prove what God is doing in your life. Trust Him. Walk with Him. Let Him finish His work in you, because when He reveals what He has been preparing, it will be undeniable. You won't have to chase it. You won't have to explain it. It will simply be.